You look so downtrodden.
Well, I mean, I'm very hurt.
Over?
Because we had to pose for a picture before this. And Nasa and Chloe said, you don't look like friends because we were within 6 inches of each other and you start to get
uncomfortable
intimacy issues. No wonder I'm downtrodden.
I just felt...
I'm not very touchy-feely myself as well, as you know, but yeah.
As we do know, because you like those yellow men around. Touch, yeah. But yeah, it was slightly uncomfortable when they asked us to move in a bit because we do like this whole desk.
We do.
Desk
we go for lunch and stuff and all that. But we're not sure.
There's actually always a table between us.
There's always a table between us.
I'm sorry,
probably best for...
But you would be inappropriate.
No.
Just in case.
No, it's fine. I mean, it could be you that's being inappropriate and I need the table. Could work either way.
Just in case anyone's reading this conversation.
It's not a gender issue, Nicola.
It's just to sort of... It's just, the way we are.
The type of people we are, Nicola.
We're too prudish. Knobs.
I don't know about that, but anyway.
So we're going to think outside of our little, our little dark hole here that we do all our podcasts from, because it's been so busy of late that we haven't had a chance to do one of our Q&As when our viewers and our listeners send in the questions they want answered. We always like to try and give what people want on the podcast and follow the news cycle and cover as much as we can. But I mean, my goodness, unless you were here full time, you wouldn't be able to cover everything. There's been loads of stuff that's gone by. But I suppose the kind of areas that we can talk about, if you have any questions for us, and, we'll accept some sort of funny ones too, but not too rude because, as I've said, we're prudish. But anyway, some of the big stories really that have been happening over the last few weeks, like the arrest of Mr. Big and others.
Yeah, I mean, the arrest of Mr. Big is really, really interesting. Now, you can see in the coverage, as these things get out, sources are very keen to emphasise this is not to do with the murder of Robbie Lawler. Now, obviously, we've reported for a long time how Mr. Big is believed to have ordered that murder. So that's an interesting thing that we have to come back to and look into what is going on there. What is the state of the Robbie Lawler investigation? Who's leading that investigation? Because it happens across the border.
It happens in 2 jurisdictions. Yes. So, in a way, Mr. Big is in trouble in both jurisdictions. There's nowhere really to run or to hide.
No, but it could be in different types of trouble in different
types
jurisdictions.
Of trouble, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we can talk all around that and, how that all came about. And of course, there was other interesting figures who were arrested and released without charge, perhaps including a woman who I know quite a bit about, who was in a relationship with Robbie Lawler at the time of his murder, a professional woman who you wouldn't have thought got caught up in this kind of thing or could possibly be arrested. A number of years ago, before Robbie Lawler was ever murdered, the last person you would have thought was going to end up being arrested and quizzed, not about his murder, but about activities around organised crime as well.
Yeah, so a fascinating story that's going to be played out, no doubt, one way or another over the next few months.
And there's a lot going on in regards to large-scale organised crime and those organisations that are constantly being labelled as they get to court. But of course, one of the organisations that was labelled during the Regency trial was the Hutch Organised Crime Group. And there's actually a lot of activity going on in connection to investigations around that still. And we'll be able to answer some questions as much as we can around that.
Yeah, because it looked like, obviously, this time last year, was it? Jerry Hutch was in every paper all the time. And then things look like they go quiet. But that's the criminal justice system works silently as well. And just because something is not in the media doesn't mean those investigations people aren't working as hard on them as they ever did. So yeah, there is more to hear about that, definitely.
Sure, the ongoing question about Daniel Kinahan, where is he? When is he getting back? But actually, what I thought was interesting was the Criminal Assets Bureau, did they issue the report, or they certainly listed some of the properties they've seized over the last few years. And there's so many of them and they go up for sale and we cover the auctions and that, but you kind of forget the significance of it. And of course, they included the sale of Daniel Kinahan's mansion.
Yeah.
Actually, Daniel Kinahan's home, where it was, how he came to own it, is such an interesting story that we haven't touched on in a long time. And it all centres around the House of Mansfield, the building of properties around City West, and the collapse of that enormous one-time multi-million conglomerate of both legitimate and illegitimate money that was the Mansfield Inc. So yeah, that's our listeners, and particularly I think our listeners abroad should be interested in the story of how we can seize these houses, how we can actually sell them, where the money goes. And there's been talk, of course, recently of, it's a long time being requested by community groups that the money that is made by the Criminal Assets Bureau is put back into the communities. I think that's a very complex thing to do. But nonetheless, Jim O'Callaghan has been recently speaking about it, and it's back kind of on the table in political circles.
Yeah, and we're going to hear, of course, the trial of Sean McGovern is it's going to begin in the next few months, so these things can take longer than expected. But I suppose when you hear the details of that trial, we're going to know, at least in part, what Daniel Kinahan it is expected face if he is extradited to the last country. So that evidence is going to be interesting in both ways, I would think.
Yeah. Encrochat, my favourite. There's been some developments with that. Always is. And of course, you have to look everywhere for developments in that. You have to look in the UK, you have to look what's happening in the north of Ireland. You have to look at the guilty pleas. You have to look at who is accepting their handle where, and what sort of a picture is emerging for police on both sides of the border as regards who is who on those handles. So
yeah, and of course the family, again, not on Encrochat, but again on an encrypted network known as the Ghost Network, a smaller, more specialised network that was run from Australia. But that has been the focus of a huge international policing operation as well. A very detailed file, we believe, has gone to the DPP. The family rose up to become probably the one of the main wholesalers of cocaine, and certainly the main wholesaler of heroin in this country. And when these dawn arrests occurred earlier this year, it looked like it was the end. But again, no charges have been brought. And that certainly is something that's going to be really interesting. And the fact that gang, there seems to be continued penetration of their drug dealing operation, but they also continue to exist and go on. So that is going to be a big case one way or the other.
And it's a policing process, that kind of relentless targeting of those groupings, and it's ultimately what usually breaks them. Like, they're the big people that are making the big money, the multimillionaires across the globe. But, when you come down to the ground, when you come down to those communities around Dublin and beyond across the country where there are groupings, street drug dealer groupings who are literally ruling these communities with an iron fist, young guys who are terrorising people. That's the cold face of us. As were some of the stories that Chloe brought us back from the family courts, where you had parents with, drug addicted children living with, grown-up children living with them, physically assaulting them and bringing drug debt collectors to their doors and terrorising elderly people. And their place to go is into the family courts looking for safety and protection orders from their own kids.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Devin Hennessy has pled guilty. Devin Hennessy from Corduff, whose father was shot dead in Brown's Steakhouse, and that has been a big case. But I suppose Devin Hennessy's activities, nobody's going to be seizing mansions in Dubai off Devin Hennessy.
No, because they've been living in social houses.
They have, but I suppose it does show you the cold face of that business, the crime that he has admitted to, the level of violence, and while the amounts of money can seem relatively small when you're talking about Daniel Kinahan, it still gives them huge power within that community. And the use of violence, which was so indiscriminate and so aggressive, allowed Devin Hennessy and his gang to hold great fear. And one of the other people, of course, that he was part of a wave of criminals that included people like Mr. Flashy, who rose up really quickly in their 20s. We're going to have to look at who's coming up next. Are there other criminal gangs that are emerging. There certainly does seem to be some Eastern European-based criminal operations that have become more and more important and more significant, because whenever somebody goes behind bars, somebody else comes along.
For sure. Obviously, the last two of the Crime World Presents podcast stories, long-form stories that we've told. One is into the cold case murder of Emer O'Loughlin, and the other into the murder of Katie Simpson by Jonathan Creswell. But there's been developments in both of those. And of course, there was an inquest into the death of Emer O'Loughlin. And I spoke to her sister Pam at length afterwards and what that meant to get that verdict of unlawful killing. There's many developments in that case, and that is seen as a huge sort of, I mean, you know, in the greater scheme of things, when the family are happy about getting a verdict of unlawful killing, you know. But it's interesting why that is significant in that case, because Pam talks about people having this thing in their back of their head. Oh, Emer O'Loughlin, she was the girl that was killed in the fire. She wasn't killed in the fire. She was dead when the fire was lit. And we heard that absolutely definitively at that inquest. She was murdered by another human being.
And you see the purpose of, you know, and we always say it's a difficult position for family members to be put into, but these people like Pam have to put themselves forward, and they have to become almost these public figures who play this role in pushing things and keeping something alive, keeping an investigation that is really complex and has a lot of dead ends. You know, people like her have to push it forward and keep it in the public eye. And of course, it's something similar with Jonathan Creswell, where Katie Simpson obviously was killed by Jonathan Creswell, but it was other people had to take up the baton and really fight on her behalf. And
we should really mention the title of those podcasts, because the podcast into the cold case murder of Emer O'Loughlin is called Evil Eye. It's available everywhere you get your podcasts, and it's on the Crime World Presents stream, essentially, where you'll also find Groomed, which is the story of Katie Simpson, the murder of Katie Simpson, the coercive control she lived under by Jonathan Creswell. And in that story, you know, ongoing, we have the Met Police investigation into how the PSNI did so terribly wrong at the beginning of that. And also the Police Ombudsman in Northern Ireland investigation continues as we await inquests into both Katie Simpson's death and that of Jonathan Creswell, who effectively murdered her but died on the second day of his own murder trial. So there's all that. I'm sure you have a million questions. So send them in and we'll get through as many as we can. I'm going to ask you to read out the email address that they're to send the questions into. Please help, Chloe. NASA, what is it? Do we remember?
crimeworld@sundayworld.com.
It is crimeworld@sundayworld.com, which I've just been prompted to say. So
you have been prompted to say by NASA. Thank God there's somebody out there.
But people can also get in touch on Instagram.
Yeah, probably Facebook. That's nearly easier. Yeah. Is it? Do people still go into the emails and stuff? It's Instagram, really, direct messages, you know, and even send directly to you or I.
Yeah. Any questions?
Stuff is open. All our what do you call it? How do you say that?
DMs.
Our DMs are open. Yeah.
Yes.
Instagram is actually preferred to that email. Is that right, NASA? Okay. So it's easier for us if you actually contact us on Instagram, having given out that. But maybe some people prefer. And if anybody wants to send a pigeon, please feel free to Media House, Talbot Street, Dublin 1. Or you can even write. But I mean, we'll be probably hoping to get to this next week. So, you know, use the social medias and get your questions, your queries in. And really, I suppose all I've left to say is have a good weekend.
Yeah, very good.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.